Never do what the client asks you to do. Always do what the client needs. It means you've got to push back. You've got to ask questions.
What do you think prevents people from challenging their clients, thinking outside the box and pushing the envelope more?
Because
do we want to scale a business, or are we better off staying very, very small?
I think it depends on the type of person. One good test is that can you build a senior leadership team? Can you build a team that actually can run the business with or without you?
Leaders anticipate, losers react. How do you anticipate what's coming?
This is something that agencies do not realise. Every agency is probably 2 to 3 to 4 years ahead of their client base in thinking. That's why they're constantly undersell themselves.
What do you think is coming in the next 12 to 18 months that agency owners cannot ignore?
Well,
what does it take to sell a creative agency? Today I'm speaking with Jonathan Leafe, who sold his multiple 7-figure business and now teaches other people how to do the same. We get into what it takes to actually grow a multiple 7-figure business, the kind of person you need to be in order to manage a big team, and whether you should even bother growing that size agency or whether it's better to stay small. Whether you are thinking about selling your agency or you are not sure whether to push to the next level, this episode is for you. As always, if you found this valuable, please share it with a friend and don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Jonathan, in your book, you say agencies are relatively easy businesses to start with little or no investment, but they're difficult to grow and hard to develop into decent sized businesses. And virtually no one who owns an agency will be able to sell it for what it's worth. Why is that?
The thing about it is agency owners literally start an agency. Well, they don't even start an agency. They start doing something they like. They get a couple of clients. They get a few more clients and they have to get some help in. And then one day, maybe within 6 months, like for me, within 6 months, suddenly you had 4 people in this tiny little office, all on Apple Macs, and thinking, how the hell did that happen? But to grow it from that size, to actually progress it to a scaled business is very hard, because often agency owners, or accidentally agency owners, simply do not have the business skills that it takes to grow that business into something which they can use as an asset to sell in the future. It's very rare. I think 1 in 400 agencies actually sell to a trade sale.
So then the question for me becomes, do we want to do that? Do we want to scale a business, or are we better off staying very, very small?
I think it depends on the type of person. You've got to have the attitude and the aptitude to be able to build a big business. And also some people want to build an empire. So sort of in inverted commas in my head, I did. So I was determined to actually do that. But other ones actually, well, being an entrepreneur, lifestyle entrepreneur that has a nice living, not too much stress, well, that's also pretty good, huh? And then there's everything in between.
Yeah. So if I have ambitions to grow, what are some of the attributes that you would look for that would signal to you that this person has got what it takes to build and hopefully exit one day a business?
Right. So that's really interesting. That's a brilliant question, because actually I feel it. I don't deal with anybody who's not had a business for example, longer than 2, 3, 4 years. Because I think if you can run a business for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years, to me, you're capable of running a business. So there's something there already. There's no ambiguity. You can run a business. Number 2, are you capable of doing it? Do you know what? I can be in an interview with someone for maybe 5, 10 minutes, and I will know if they're capable of doing what it takes to actually get to the stages of crossing the desert to become a big agency. You just feel it. And I've met so many people now, so many budding entrepreneurs, you just know.
And do you think that person knows?
Some people, yes. I think they will say, yeah, I'm ready for this. I can do all of this. And thinking, well, do you know what? No, you can't. I could become a Premier League footballer, but I'd probably have to do 10,000 hours and have to have loads of talent. Some people just simply cannot do it. They just simply do not have that skill. So yeah, some people might be a little bit deluded, and sometimes I talk them down and say, well, actually, let's build something which is absolutely manageable. Let's build something which is going to provide you with a really decent living, and let's take it from there. So that might be stage one. Stage two might be looking at it. Okay, right, we've done that. We've proved to ourselves we can do that. So what do we need to go from, say, stage two to stage three to stage four? And then we build it up in segments rather than just like putting our foot to the metal, putting full throttle on and just going for it. That's often the wrong thing to do. I think slow and steady is always the way to do it, in all honesty. And that also gives you longevity.
So just kind of touching on those stages, what are the key kind of milestones that you want people to get to along that journey from kind of one-man band all the way through to big agency that's ready to scale, to sell?
Stage one is definitely one-man band. Stage two is micro agency where they've got 2 or 3 employees, maybe a few freelancers. Stage three is just around 10, 12, 13, 14 people. And that is when I call it fear of 13, because that is at the time when the next person that comes in, you're thinking, well, you might not know them very well. They might be working around a different office around the corner, might be working remote, but you actually never have any interactions with them because it's done through a manager or a team leader. And then you realize that actually to get from 15 to 20 to 25 is a huge task, because you cannot run your business on the back of a fact packet or a spreadsheet any longer. You need to have processes, systems, accountability. You need to have people in place who are very senior, who know what they're doing, to get from that stage three business to you starting to grow business, where everything is scaled, everything has got a process, a system, etc. And that's generally around 20, 25 people. So that bit in between is the hardest place to be for an agency owner, without question. Certainly was for me, and everyone that I work with who's actually done it says the same thing.
And what is it about that 13th person and that stage that makes it so difficult?
It's because prior to that, you can just make things up as you go along. Pretty much, if you want to make a decision and change something in the afternoon, you can. You don't really, it's actually quite a nice place to be because it's super flexible. Everybody mucks in. One person might be wearing 3 different hats. There might be a project management account manager, and then they might be emptying the bins. It's something as simple as that. But as you grow, everybody needs to know where they fit into the system, into the process.
Yeah, and so this is what Daniel Priestley refers to as a lifestyle business, right?
100%. Yeah, exactly that. In fact, a lot of my thought and my my sort of ideas and my ethos are very much aligned with what Daniel Priestley says about, crossing the desert, going from, because often that means that period where before that you say you had 10 people, 12 people, 15 people, really happy place because you know everybody really well. A lot of people have been around for a long time, but once you want to start scaling that business, literally you have to cross this barren desert. And it often means that profitability might suffer, often means that your stress levels will go through the roof because suddenly you're doing stuff. Actually, you've had to take a step back and you're having to do different jobs. You're having to man the bridge. You've never been on the bridge before. You're having to sort of like pull levers that you don't really know where they're attached to. That sort of thing. It's really quite a totally different process. You've got to become from just an agency owner to an agency operator. It's a totally different mindset. And the big thing for me is when I realized this, and I fortunately fell on my feet because I joined an organization called For Entrepreneurs. In fact, I was one of the founder members of it, For Entrepreneurs Only. And we sort of went through this process called step change. And it was all about this. It was making a big step change from a small business to a scalable business. But the good news, once you've done it, once you've scaled through to 2025, you've got the scale there. You can go to 50 or 100 without really changing much because all you do is adding people to the exact same structure.
Yeah, and that kind of begs the question that I've always had in my mind of like, why would I do it? Why would I go from a small 6-person agency that's probably quite profitable, where it's fun and, we all know each other, to a 20-person agency with all of these challenges? Like, what's the real advantage, or what's the bigger game here?
Very, very simple. One is a lifestyle business and your earning potential is what it is. Whereas obviously with a scaling business, your earning potential is what you can actually achieve with that business. So you will not ever sell a business generally in the agency world that doesn't turn over less than 5 million and have an EBIT of, say, 1 million. That's fact. So if you're thinking about selling an agency, that's what you have to have, unless you're incredibly niched or you've got a specialism which you own the IP for example, then that sort of is a game changer from a point of view of valuation. But otherwise, if you're a small little business, well, who's going to buy it? You are the business effectively, which is not a problem because I've got a couple of clients in that situation, and quite frankly, I'm very envious because they've got lovely boutique businesses, very profitable, lovely clients. They know everything that's going on. The staff are well settled. They're doing great work and they're enjoying themselves and earning very well at the same time. So why add the stress? But I did it, and I actually loved having that stress.
Yeah, it's coming back to that personality type, right? Is like, actually, I thrive in that. And, both you and I are lucky enough to know Daniel on quite a personal level. And I think I can see now that he is very much a through and through entrepreneur, and he is driven by the things that come with that level of business. And I think what this conversation is highlighting to me or reinforcing to me is the importance of knowing yourself and knowing what you want to build. Because I think, like you said, a lot of people kind of get forced in this direction. They find themselves with 12, 13 people, and they don't really have any desire to cross the desert, but they're just kind of being pushed with the current. Would you say that that's a fair observation?
Yeah, 100%. And also that makes them incredibly unhappy. And they end up doing something that they never wanted to do. My most favorite role was being chief exec. I was a designer. I was a content writer. I was exceptionally good on Photoshop. I was a really good typesetter. But actually, there were lots of people who were better than that at me. And I really liked doing those jobs. But actually, I really, really enjoyed being a chief exec, effectively. And also, let's face it, there's a bit of ego in there as well. There's a bit of prestige. You can, all of the network that you make wherever your network is, it's all part and parcel of it if you're that way inclined. But many people just aren't, and there's no point in saying, right, I'm really enjoying myself as a footballer in League One, or suddenly I'm going to go and try and get into the Premier League when you just can't, And you mentioned Daniel Priestley, of course, he's exceptional. He really is exceptional. He's 0.001% of entrepreneurs. He's that good at what he does.
Yeah, it's cut from that cloth.
Absolutely. There's loads of agencies out there who are small, boutique agencies that they're doing really well, and they're, in all honesty, better off staying where they are, but just making the most of what they've got.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that in a minute, because I know there are some strategies and some theories that you've got around those kind of businesses and how to make them as fun and profitable as possible. Let's just kind of close the loop on the scaling side of things. So if I'm a little bit on the fence, like I'm not really sure, maybe I'm still sort of in my late 20s, early 30s, I've got that drive, I've got that ambition, I know I've got a great design team around me, maybe I'm running a small studio of 6 or 7 people, but I'm a little bit unsure, I'm a little bit nervous about the journey ahead. How do I know whether to kind of push on and build this thing or whether to just kind of stay where I am?
I suppose one good test is that, can you build a senior leadership team? Can you build a team that actually can run the business with or without you? I think that is the absolute test, because if you think you're going to do it on your own, you've got a big shock coming. You cannot do it on your own. You simply cannot spin all the plates. You have to be willing to give hats away. You've got to be saying, right, okay, I was the account manager, I was also the project manager, I was also this, that was also that, I was also the other. You've got to decide what you are going to do and hand off other jobs. So that is probably the test. And I do that test with actually some of my clients. I said, okay, if we're going to do this, we're going to build a senior leadership team and see how that goes. If we can build a senior leadership team and get them fully responsible and accountable for their part in the growth of the business and the operations of the business, well, then great. We can actually scale to whatever size we like. And actually, you only need really 6 people in a senior leadership team. That is the only board of directors you will ever need. You don't need more than that. Other than that, you might have advisors or specialist finance directors, etc. But your core board is 6 people.
Okay, so what other things have you got to love doing? If you're going to grow an agency to that size and sell it, what other things have you got to love?
You've got to have incredibly broad shoulders and be unbelievably resilient, because things will happen that will try and sink the business, and you've got to be able to navigate around it.
What are some things that happened in your journey that really tested that for you?
We were doing probably about 1.5 million turnover. This was maybe 15, 20 years ago. So a decent sized business. But I noticed £1 million of that turnover was flaky on the basis that we were in an industry that was dying. So we made the decision as a senior leadership team that said within 2 years, we're not going to be doing any of that. So we were quite happy to sacrifice 1 million turnover to replace it with something that we didn't know what we were going to replace it with. So that we had to really dig deep to find that. So you've got to be absolutely on it. You can't take your eyes off it, unfortunately. I know we talk about work-life balance, etc., and absolutely agree with all of that, but you do have to be a very present CEO to be able to manage in agency land.
How do you make those kind of decisions where you're letting that much revenue go, or you're kind of swapping out a service that is becoming redundant? These really big decisions that feel almost life and death. What's your kind of approach to those kind of decisions?
It genuinely felt like life or death, and said, if we carry on this track, we will be dead in the water. We had a specialism, everybody caught up. The price was plummeting. So we just had to get out of it. We had to be brave. We actually did good. That's when we went into full on digital. And we're talking about the late 90s now. So building our first website in 1996, well ahead of the curve. We did Google ads before there was even a name for it. We had to call it online advertising. People didn't really know. We started social media. People didn't know what it was called. We called it online PR. So we could sort of like try and get them to understand it. So we were inventing stuff or using what was coming down the line, but we had to upsell it to our clients or find new clients that we could sell those services to.
What allowed you to have the confidence to do that versus sitting back and just kind of going with what you already had and what you already knew?
There was no alternative. Because the other thing that I was good at is I always looked 2, 3, 4, 5 years ahead. I was always thinking, what's coming next? What does the business look like in 2, 3, or 4 years' time? Because that's where we're going. And if we actually don't do something about it, suddenly we're going to be in a position where we can't do anything about it. So it wasn't really a decision that was hard to make, to be honest, Matt. We just had to go for it. Trust our instincts. Make bold decisions, take risks.
Tony Robbins has got a great saying. He says, leaders anticipate, losers react. How do you anticipate what's coming?
So there's 3 things that you can see what's ahead of you. We can now see probably what's going to happen in the next 3, 6, 12 months. Beyond that, it's a bit harder, but it's there. It's a bit foggy. And then but what's going to happen in 3 or 4 years' time, there are faint signals out there. So it's those faint signals that you've got to be looking for.
What are you looking for? If I jump into Jonathan's brain, when you say 3 to 6 months' time, what signals are you looking at that tell you what's coming?
This is something that agencies do not realize. Every agency is probably 2 to 3 to 4 years ahead of their client base in thinking, but actually they don't realize it. That's why they're constantly undersell themselves. I knew we were 3 or 4 years ahead, but I wanted to be further. I wanted to be 1 or 2 years ahead of every other agency. So it's looking what everybody's doing and finding that one thing. Do you know what? It was for us, it was also, for example, here's a classic thing. When we were starting to use databases and automating things, there was a job that we used to do, which was very, very heavily on typesetting. I said, that we could use programming to actually make this job a lot easier. And so we invested some time in that. And so a job that took us 2 weeks to do in year 1, the next year, it took us half an hour.
Okay. So you're kind of looking at like industry trends, but you're also noticing what tools are available, and you're kind of constantly thinking about, could we do this more effectively? Could we do this in a slightly different way than everyone else is doing?
Exactly that. And also look outside your industry. I used to get a magazine from an industry or a topic that I had no interest in whatsoever, and I would read it from cover to cover just to try and get into the heads of what those people like. For example, 2 million people like fishing. God knows why. So I used to buy a fishing magazine and read it, and suddenly said, well, yeah, all right, fair point. I can understand why they like it. So what I tried to do is just trying to open my mind into other possibilities, potentials. Go and see people like Daniel Priestley. He is very good at his future predictions. I went to a conference in America, and actually the leader of the conference was what he called a futurist. I'd never heard this term, probably an Americanism, but he was talking in terms of what's coming down the line in 5 and 10, 15 years' time. And he said something that I never forgot. And he said, the kids who are just starting school today will be doing jobs that we can't even imagine. And that stuck with me. And I said, well, that's what agencies are that. That's what we have to be. We have to be doing those things that other people can't imagine.
I'm always fascinated with people who have an ability to predict the future. Maybe it was because when I watched the lottery when I was younger, I was very attracted to Mystic Meg, just kind of dating myself a little bit there. But I think it's really fascinating. So what do you think is coming in the next 12 to 18 months that agency owners cannot ignore?
Well, I don't necessarily think it's a technological thing. I mean, there's a lot of talk about AI and things like that. And anything that comes along, as far as I'm concerned, is a great opportunity. I don't care what it is. It's an opportunity for agencies to have a look at. I think what the big shift for me is what agencies should be doing is they should be getting deeper relationships with their clients, whatever that means. And I think that depends on what type of clients you're working with. But I always say to all of my clients, and every time, if you've ever listened to me or even the book, said the thing that you've got to do is you have got to be in front of your client, suggesting things constantly to them. That will lead to new business. It will lead to clients sticking with you, and it will lead to your clients absolutely 100% relying on you, not even being able to think about anything without ringing you up and say, Jonathan, I've just thought about this. What do you think? And that puts you in such a position of strength, and it allows you to bring new ideas to them all the time. That was the cornerstone of the success of my business. No question that we were absolutely embedded with our clients. And I was constantly in touch with them saying, have you thought about this? We've just noticed this. Have your one of your competitors just started trying something out? We should try that. And do you know what? We can actually do it better. And it's all of that sort of thing. So for me, that is the future. It might sound a bit old-fashioned, but actually build those personal relationships, because I think that's been lost a bit. I think we need to recycle and revisit those and say that is where the strength of agencies lies, is building those personal relationships.
Yeah, I agree. The amount of agency owners I talk to, when they say they're struggling with business development or project flow, and I ask them, well, like, how many of your previous clients have you reached out to recently, or what's your referral strategy? And they're like, oh, I haven't really done anything. Like, they haven't come back to us, so we're just assuming that they haven't got any work on. And it's such a passive approach.
I can't stand it. I absolutely I haul my clients over the coals if that's their attitude they're taking. I said, we are order makers, not order takers. It's as simple as that. We are the ones who are driving development, driving customer success. By the way, blatantly obvious, if our customers are successful, what happens? We're more successful. So let's help them be more successful all the time, wherever we can, whatever we're doing.
Do you think it's like a personality type where people are more inclined to look at a customer's pain points and come up with a solution versus just thinking about the creative? Or do you think that's something that just needs to be trained in people?
I think you probably have to have that in you already. I think you've got to have a genuine interest in what your clients are doing. If you're just doing it through lip service or just saying, well, we'll wait for the brief to come through and have a look at that and respond to the brief. No, create the brief yourself. If a brief comes over, take it apart, question it, send it back and say, is this what you mean? The first thing I said to all of my staff when they started in my business in Strawberry, said, never do what the client asks you to do. Always do what the client needs. Now, that could be the same thing, but more often than not, it's not. It means you've got to push back. You've got to ask questions. And even if on the third time the client says, no, really, Jonathan, I want you to do this, and I will hold my hands up and say, well, fair enough. You have been advised.
Yeah, so you've kind of like pre-warned them, basically.
Yeah, exactly. So if they're walking into a great horror show, or is that what we see it's going to be, then we advise them about it. But that comes back to the creativity. Now, I'm pleased you mentioned that word, because I think because of a lot of data availability, And a lot of people saying they're data driven and want to focus on, A/B testing and things like that. And I get all of that, and that's absolutely fine. But actually, creativity is what creates the point of difference every time. If you look historically from this point backwards, creativity has always won the day. It's never been data, because if you actually followed the data, you would always end up in two places. You'd end up with tomato soup because everyone sort of likes it, or beige because it doesn't offend anybody. So that's not creativity. That's following the data to the average. And agents should never do that. They should always be bigger than that. They should be braver than that. They should be challenging their clients at every stage. And that is led by creative, not by doing what the numbers say.
What do you think prevents people from challenging their clients, thinking outside the box and pushing the envelope more?
Because I think genuinely the easiest answer is say, well, the data tells us this, so we're going to follow that. It's just the easy answer. And I would say, well, the data's saying that. Is that correct? Do we need to challenge that? What happens if we're braver than everybody else? Otherwise, if you just follow the data, everybody looks identical. So, and that's the point I'm making, is that creativity is that important in every walk of life and everything that you do. And if you want to stand out, you have got to stand out. You can't be average.
Yeah, I'm fascinated with this because I've had a few conversations on the podcast about this concept of standing out, and the title Creative Courage is really examining anything that takes that level of courage. And the reason I think standing out and going against the grain takes so much courage is I think we're biologically programmed to not do that. I think we're biologically programmed
we don't want to hurt ourselves.
Yeah, to fit in, right? And to not be cast out from the tribe.
Exactly.
So is there anything, like, I really love trying to get into people's heads. Is there anything that you would do if you were back in your shoes now at Strawberry and you brought on a really big client and they were kind of suggesting this brief that you thought was pretty beige, it was going to lead us to a really boring campaign, and you and your team came up with an idea that you knew was really off the wall, and if it went sideways could maybe even lose you that client? What are you saying to yourself and to the team that allows you to have the courage to follow through with that idea in spite of the perceived risk?
In our business, when we were doing these presentations or coming up with ideas, I said, everything that we do has to be challenging. If it's not challenging, then it's not worth showing. And because the thing about it is, you go into a client, you present something which is challenging, they will go potentially, or they'll go, wow, that's like amazing. But if you go with something bland, you can't. If you're a chef and you're cooking an amazing dish, it's got to be amazing. If you make something which is bland, then you can add Tabasco to it, you can add salt and pepper, but still it's basically going to be bland. And from an amazingly sort of off the wall, punchy idea, you can come back a little bit. But if it's bland, you can't push it forward. It's always going to be bland. And the client will think, do you know what? I could have done that. There's nothing special in that. We have to wow them. We have to surprise them. That's what we do. I was very fortunate in the first ever agency job I had. I had the most brilliant creative director, and some of the stuff that he came out with was just absolutely outstanding. And I never forgot that. I said, we've got a challenge every step of the way.
It sounds like it's almost like a value that you had in the business.
100%. We were famous for our creativity. And by the way, once if someone comes into our office and we know that they're already over that, all right, we're not Picasso and we're not Banksy, but we're a creative agency that will challenge our clients, and that's what they come for. They don't want average. They don't want to be telling their designers what to do. They don't want to be sat, moving the mouse around, the cursor around the screen. They want you to lead them. And by the way, if they were that type of client, they wouldn't be using us, because they would find an agency that would do what they wanted them to do.
Yeah. And how do you deal with clients that come to you and you can sense that they're kind of looking for a pixel pusher rather than a partner?
They would never be a client. They would never, that would be such a massive red flag. They would never get in through the door.
When you say they would never get in through the door, is that because when they come to your website, they see that's not you, or like what point do they get filtered out?
So, for example, even when people said if they came and said, right, we want you to do a pitch for this, I just say no. Simple as that. I'm not pitching. I said, and the reason why we're not pitching is that A, we don't have enough information. We don't know you well enough. We haven't been through the whole discovery phase. How can we possibly do anything which is remotely on point? And by the way, I've done so many pitches in my career over the years. It was only sort of like in the latter days when I had the confidence to push back. But in the early years when we did pitches, 9 times out of 10, you would do a pitch. You would get accepted on the prettiness of your pitch or the prettiness of your designs. And then, of course, they went out the window and you got down to work. You would end up doing something totally different. It's a total waste of time. And also, I used to say to the clients, I said, well, why think about it? If an agency is coming you to pitch, who are they sending in? They're sending in the A team. So who's ready to do your work once you've signed up? The B team, because the A team's already doing the next pitch. I said, it's just a waste of everybody's time. And that's what used to resonate. That used to land quite well with the clients that would be suited to us.
Do you think that takes years of experience to get to that level of confidence?
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. And I try and coach it, obviously, and it lands most of the time, but it does take confidence and it does take years. And you've got to have, a bit of wool on your back to be able to stand up there and say, right, hang on a minute, let's think about this slightly differently.
How do you coach someone that is clearly very good at what they do, but seems to lack that level of confidence and is just clearly being pushed around by clients?
I just give them ways of coping with it. So I give them my experience. I give them, have you tried this? Have you tried that? Let's try something different. If a client is, I'm going through one at the moment, I won't mention any names, but their client they do probably about 150 pieces of work for this client every year, but the client wants everything itemized and different. I said, just don't do it. Just don't do that. So we were going to put all this. They've worked for them the last 3 or 4 years. We know what they spend. We're going to do it all on a retainer. And it's all going to be get into one big pot, but you will get excellent work from it. They spend more time arguing the toss on a 50 quid job than actually getting on with stuff. It's a waste of time. And what their job is now to persuade the client that their thinking is better for the client, better value for the client.
It seems to me through my observations that it's those conversations and those kind of micro decisions that really distinguish the agencies that thrive between the ones that struggle.
Yeah, well, I think so. But it goes back to at the start of the conversation when we were talking about the smaller agencies. There's plenty of boutique agents out there, tens of thousands of them, of 5 to 10 people that aren't thinking like I'm thinking. They're just thinking, well, we're happy in our little lane. We're happy we're just going to do what we do. We're going to charge as much as we can. We're going to keep our clients happy, make a profit at the end of the year, have a very nice lifestyle business. And that's absolutely fine. So not all agencies have to behave like this. But I think if you're in the creative side, particularly, and I'm going to say performance marketing side now, very much so, because that has got to a stage now where I look at it and I think, my God, this is 90% of it is absolutely terrible. And the ones that are really good are now starting to stand out. It's almost like it's really gone full circle. So creativity has come back into that.
Let's kind of come back to this idea of the boutique agency, because I know a lot of people listening will have this size of agency. And that's kind of why I was asking the question about how do I know if I push forward or stay where I am? But there's also 2 kinds of boutique agency, right? And Daniel Priestley talks about this. He talks about the struggling boutique, and then he talks about the lifestyle boutique. So what are some things that you've observed that differentiate between a struggling boutique and a really healthy lifestyle boutique?
Generally, the struggling boutique has got one person who pulls all the strings. They employ a designer but carry on designing. They employ an account manager but carry on account managing. They employ a project manager but carry on project managing. They're the ones who struggle because they just cannot let go of the basic things that they need to let go of to make the business thrive. And the ones that are doing well are the ones who've got people in and trust them to do the job. They lead rather than manage. So it's you can spot a leader over a manager. The manager is obviously very much micromanaging, whereas a leader is actually leading by example and giving people responsibility to make their own decisions, not having to think that they've got to make every single decision. That's the basic difference. The business that I've just described, where it's got the leader, they can make very, very good profits and have a lovely, enjoyable lifestyle, whereas the ones who struggle, they still want to be, it's like if they're in a football team, they want to be goalkeeper, midfielder, left winger, right winger, and striker, and manager. And you can't.
They can't let go of that freelance mindset.
Correct, exactly.
So apart from delegation and things like that, talk to me about kind of business development and other things that people struggle with. Like, what else do I need to be doing between that kind of 3 to 10 person agency to make sure it's fun, profitable, and that I'm actually attracting the right kind of clients?
If you want to attract the right kind of clients, you've got to be the right kind of agency. And the right kind of agency is the one that actually becomes a client magnet. They get a reputation for being excellent at what they do, whatever that is. There's no point in saying what it is. There might be, and they just keep their clients. And they have clients who will treat them with respect. They'll have clients which see them as partners rather than suppliers. That's a great starting point, because that's what we had at Strawberry for sure. And that enabled us. So when we were introduced to a new potential client, or a new client came to us, or, I used to network the hell out of everything, because you never know what's going to happen. The network events, or whatever the event is that you least want to go to, generally delivered the best results. And the ones you thought, well, these are going to be absolutely perfect. And sometimes it's random conversations. There was one particular client that we ended up with. I met him 5 years before he became a client, and we just got on, and one day I got the call and said, Jonathan, do you know what we could do with a bit of help? That client turned out to be huge for us, and it was brilliant to work with them as well. So you've got to be patient. I mean, I think you can't, new business is a long-term approach. You've got to be on it all the time. It's a combination of your website, your LinkedIn posts, your newsletters, if you have such a thing, your networking, absolutely 100%. That's the most important, no question. Referrals, speaking to your clients, that all of those sort of things we did, and that kept our sales pipeline, if you like, there. But the big step change for us, of course, when we lost that, or deliberately lost that big part of our business, is that we said, and I said this thing to my senior leadership team, and said, within 2 years' time, on the 1st of January, we need to have 90% of our revenue predicted, or virtually guaranteed. And we did it. And then that allowed us to go from that base to what would be the equivalent of 3 million turnover today, or a bit more maybe, and 40 people in the team pretty quickly, and actually without too much drama. So we crossed the desert. We decided what we're going to do. We were very deliberate with our strategic intent, and we executed it.
One of the things that I'm kind of picking up as you're talking is the importance of actually carving out time to do these things. I'm sure that you've spoken to agency owners who they're just sucked in by the day-to-day.
They let them get sucked in by the day-to-day.
Okay, so they let themselves get sucked in by the day-to-day. What are some things that they're doing, or what are some principles that you teach that gives people that headspace to be creative, to be strategic, to go to networking events? How do we take ourselves out of the day-to-day?
The classic phase is working on the business rather than working in the business, isn't it? So that's the starting point. And actually what I mentioned before about that effective delegation, you hire people, you don't get a dog and bark yourself. You hire people, give them responsibility, and have such a loop where actually, and I actually give them, there's loads of techniques. There's a few in the book actually of how to do it. But just, if you look at your to-do list, the only tasks you have to do are the ones that are going to make a significant difference to the success, prosperity, and profitability of the business. They're the only ones you do. Everything else you delegate to people who can do the job probably better than you. And when you delegate it to the first tier, you can stay in the loop, but you're not actively doing it. And when you delegate tasks which are in the third tier, i.e. tasks that need to be done, but you don't need to know the outcome, you delegate it and say, right, it's your responsibility. I don't need to know the outcome. Now get on with it. And then that's the only way you can do it.
How do I know what those tasks are?
You practice and you work it through. So, if you scored everything out of 10, a 10 being a task which is so important, I must do it because it's going to affect the profitability and the scalability and prosperity of the agency moving forward. That is a number one task. A 1 out of 10 task is setting up a new computer, for example. Someone else can do that. Or rearranging the desks, or painting. Do you know what I mean? That they should be pretty obvious. And also that another good technique, actually, if you're sort of trying to work on these things, if you've got 12 tasks to do, you can only have 4 in each grouping. So you can only have 4 in the top tier, 4 in the second tier, 4 in the third tier, and it really makes you think hard about which ones are going to drop down. So by the time you've done that, it automatically almost like sorts itself out.
And when you're talking about the top tier, is that the things that you deem to be most important?
Exactly. Yeah, and the bottom tier being the ones that you delegate and you don't need to know the outcome of those.
It is very much a mindset thing as well, isn't it? Because like I remember I had a client once and he was really struggling with time management and always seemed to be busy. And I asked him to write down everything that he was doing in a day. And there were things on there like organize the window cleaner and, like all of these different things.
No task.
Why are you doing
Not going
this?
to take any difference with prosperity. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And the trouble is, the other pit that people fall into is that they put down as a priority of the task they like doing. Another phrase that I'll coin from someone else is you've got to eat that frog. Sometimes you've got to do the stuff that you don't like doing. And that's why, a lot of people in agency land, because they started the business because they like doing something, they can't run a business. They tend to just go back to the mothership, which is doing what they like doing. Oh, do you know what? I'll do those cutouts. I really like doing cutouts, or I'll do those crops because I really like doing that. But that's not going to benefit the business long term. It's just benefiting what they like doing. Like, fair enough. If there's something you like doing, I'm not saying don't do it, but I'm saying just be realistic. Saying you're doing that out of choice, not because you have to.
Do you think some people or some creatives just aren't made to run a business and they would be better off in jobs?
Absolutely, yeah, 100%. They'd be much better off as staying as a freelancer, or because even the going from employed to freelancing, right? It's difficult. Suddenly they've got to find clients, they've got to send invoices out, they've got to chase the payment of those invoices, all the stuff which they bloody hate doing. All they want to do is create and do what they like doing. So that's in a microcosm, isn't it? And then you times that by 10. And suddenly they're going to have to do stuff which they don't like doing. And then once you start employing people, well, you're on to HR issues. And then you've got to understand the difference between the millennials and Gen Zs, for God's sake, And that's a challenge in itself.
When you look back at your journey, Jonathan, what would you say have been the most enjoyable things about building an agency of that size?
For me, it was the seeing people progress through the agency. So when I left the business, there were 20 people, half the business had started their careers at Strawberry. A lot of them had started as apprentices. We actually even had an offshoot business which just employed apprentices and first job graduates. To see those people come up, and I'm still in contact with some of these people, and they're doing like amazing things. And I thought I was part of that journey, and that gives me an amazing amount of satisfaction. I can even feel like goosebumps going down my back now. So that for me, that was the pinnacle. And I'm still good friends with a lot of my bigger clients. We now see each other socially. We're not working together, obviously, but playing golf or meeting up for drinks or whatever, so that still happens. And so I think those are sort of like the highlights. The lowlights, of course, again, potentially it's HR issues, where someone is just, you just can't get through to them, or it's not going to work and you have to let them go, or which is really, really unfortunate. In 27 years, I never made anybody deliberately redundant. I'm going to say that in inverted commas. So I was very proud of that. In the 27 years that I ran the business, we grew every year. And we were very profitable every year. Some years we're incredibly profitable. I mean, stupidly profitable. And also, I managed to exit the business through a management buy-in, which I engineered. I picked my successors. And so I viewed it as a legacy and said, look, I'm going to train you in the next 5-10 years to be able to be capable of running this business, and you will acquire the business from me. And this is how it's going to work. And that's exactly what happened. And it's a really good way of doing it now. So I've built a legacy. They took the business on. I closed the door. I said goodbye, good luck, and off they went. They were more than capable of taking that business on without any input from me.
And so today you're using your years of knowledge and expertise to help other agency owners. And I know you said to me last time we were talking, it's kind of more of a passion project, something you just love doing. It's not like you have to do this to kind of pay the bills. I'm just curious, like, what is it that drives you? Like, what's your mission right now?
Yeah, as you say, the bills are paid. I made sure that I had financial freedom when I left Strawberry, and that I'm doing this because I really enjoy it. I want to stay involved. I love using my brain. I love helping people, picking the right people. And I can think of, I'm trying to think, maybe probably 5 to 10 clients over the 7 years, and I'm thinking, I'm so proud of them. One in particular, I won't mention their names again. I'm so proud of them. I just look on in awe of what they've achieved. And when I started working with them maybe 3 or 4 years ago, they were really in the doldrums. I think they were about to throw the towel in. And now, my God, they're exciting. They're dynamic. It looks absolutely fantastic. And I'm so proud of that. So that's what I get out of it. And I love talking to people like yourself, very, articulate, educated people. And that's what's great about our industry. My God, there are some fantastic people in it. And I know lots of other coaches, doing the same things that I do. And we're all friends, we all swap ideas, and, we're not in competition. We just want to help the industry. That's true. It's absolutely true. And I can't think of that really existing in many other industries. We're in a very, very collegiate, open-minded industry with lots of happy, educated, clever, creative, thoughtful people. That's what I love about it. There's very few people who, you don't really want to enter this industry to make a fortune, in all honesty. There's some that do, but I think it's more rare. I think more people, it's more of a vocation, in all honesty.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I get to hang out with some incredible people, and I get the privilege of coaching some people who are far more talented than me in the world of creativity. And it's a gift, and it's a blessing to be able to do that on a daily basis. So I share that sentiment with you. Where can people find out more about you?
Well, the best place, to be honest, is on my LinkedIn profile. Very simple name, Jonathan Leafe. I think it's pretty unique. And also read the book. The book's available on Amazon. I'm an agency owner, get me out of here. It was supposed to be a working title, and it just stuck.
Yeah. And I love the cover as well. Literally like the emergency exit. It's a great read, and there's so much insight in there and so many nuggets of your years of wisdom. So I highly recommend, if you listen to this right now, please go to Amazon and grab a copy of that book.
Yeah, thanks for the plug. And as I say, I love it. People connect with me on LinkedIn and reach out and just say, look, I'm doing consulting. It's my job, but actually, I'm more than happy to speak to anybody and give them half an hour and just say, well, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? That's what I do.
Absolutely, Jonathan. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure too. Thank you very much for inviting me on.
Before you leave, if you found this episode valuable, please hit the subscribe button. Also, if you are a creative business owner doing more than 10K a month and you want to grow and scale without working longer hours or hiring a massive team, then I have something you may be interested in. We have just developed a tool that will give you a custom growth strategy based on exactly where you are in your business right now. So you can stop consuming lots of random content and trying to figure things out on your own and actually get something personalized to you. You will also receive a free copy of my book, and it will point out relevant chapters. If you'd like to take the scorecard, it's totally free. You just have to click the link in the show notes or connect with me on LinkedIn, and you will see a link in my bio. Thanks for listening. This is the Creative Courage Podcast.